correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, what's up? Welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm Steve, and over there's Steve.
Hello.
How are you tonight, Steve?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
Yep, that we are. Glad to hear you're doing all right. Feeling a little better than the weekend, I suppose.
Yeah, much better than the weekend. But before we get into the weekend, let's talk about the Court Games series of podcasts.
Yes, that's another family of podcasts here on the D20 Radio Network. Court Games, Crimson Gold Agonies, and I'm drawing a blank on the third one this week. Fortune and Strife. There we go.
That's it.
They're all three centered around the Legend of the Five Rings properties. Mostly the RPG, but they do, I believe, on the actual court game show, sometimes talk occasionally about either like the card game or some of the fiction lore and that kind of stuff. But all three of them, they kind of, share some people and blah, blah, blah. Crimson Gold Agonies and Fortune and Strife are both actual plays. One is more audio drama than the other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very good stuff if you're into L5R.
Very cool stuff happening over there.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we sort of alluded to at the top of the episode, as you probably heard last week, I was sick and out and am still in quarantine due to a series of unfortunate events and was not able to go to PGX. However, you did.
I did. I spent, pretty much all day Saturday at PGX. Was there basically from, slightly before the doors opened to right about the time they closed on Saturday, and then pretty much the same on Sunday, although I think I got there at like maybe 10 minutes after the doors opened on Sunday. But yeah, it was good. It was a fun show. Obviously bigger than last year because they had the entire convention center. I got to meet some cool people. I got to play some cool games. Got to play some games that I've been wanting to play for a long time. Got to run a game and did not have nearly enough time to do all the cool things that I wanted to do because I was doing other cool things.
Isn't that always how it goes, though?
Well, there is that, right? I mean...
yeah, so maybe we start with sort of the easy place, which is the game that you ran.
Oh, yeah. So I ran Havoc Brigade again, which, I ran it once before at Gamer Nation Con, actually. And I found it looking for Game of the Week one time. And it's from Grant Howitt, Honey Heist, Heart Spire, and so on. It's a cool little game. It's actually specifically designed for con one-shots. And the basic premise of the game is your PCs are a band of orcs. Well, one of them is a half-orc, and one of them is 6 goblins. But they're orcs for purposes, right? So basically they get sent into the city on some pretty much ridiculous task. Basically their job is to go raise havoc.
As the namesake implies.
Exactly, right? That's sort of the nickname of these squads of orcs, right? Havoc Brigades. And I kind of elevator pitch this game as, all those crazy ideas you get in your normal D&D game or your normal whatever game, and you're like, nah, it's a little too over the top, too silly, and too crazy. We won't do that. That's what Havoc Brigade wants you to do.
Nice.
System is super, super simple. Just D6s, 4 and higher success. You get to add them based on, like, anytime you try to do anything, you get 1 die. If you can somehow justify a skill that is on your sheet as being beneficial to what it is you're doing, you get another die. If you can make 2 of your skills make sense, you get, 1 for each. You can use pieces of equipment, same way. There's drives, there's but essentially, and by the way, all the it comes with 6 pre-gens. That's how it's designed to run. So literally, it's not very expensive on drive-through. I believe it's pay what you want on itch. I can say, in having run it twice, I've had a blast with it both times. So definitely great fun is like a palate cleanser or anything like that. But yeah, so basically, this game just wants you to do crazy stuff. And I got kind of lucky because, and I don't off the top of my head, and I kind of feel bad about this, I don't remember the names of the players I had, but they were an entire gaming group. Like, these are people that normally play together along with their normal GM. And for a game like Havoc Brigade that is really more about silly inter-party interaction and playing off each other and probably a little bit of one-upsmanship, having a group that knew each other, and so they, that rapport you get, right, when you play with people for a while, you just kind of know how they're going to react, or what they'll play off of, what bits to leave hanging for them, and they for you, right? So that made it even better. And the thing with Havoc Brigade too is, to a certain point, the quote unquote mission of the game is irrelevant. It's about the hijinks getting in that direction. That's where all the fun is. And so, they ended up breaking into the zoo, setting a bunch of things loose, some of which I made them make up on the spot, um, and just assorted other things. But it was a lot of fun, and they all had a blast, and I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, that was what I got to run.
Okay.
But like I said, and it didn't occur to me, but in a game like that, having the crew that was used to playing together, I think just elevated it yet another level.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that having them already have that camaraderie really helps the
Yeah,
whole situation of Havoc Brigade, knowing what that game is and how crazy it can become.
yeah, because like when I ran it at Gamer Nation Con, it was great, and I think I had a couple of players that either played with each other regularly or were at least somewhat familiar with each other.
Didn't you run it for the 404 gang?
No,
Oh, I thought you did.
Terry, Austin, Jim, I think. And there's other people that I recognized. There was a couple people that I know they're on the Eberron Renewed Discord.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I mean, like, it was a good game. We had a blast, and people were still playing off each other, but just not to the interaction level you get. And then, like, they would do something kind of crazy, and so be like, okay, we need sort of a consequence, right, or a reaction to
Right.
what happens. So I'd like look across the table from whoever did the crazy thing and go, okay, what happens? And so that just, they're like, oh, we get to mess with each other too. you
Yeah,
know, they
that's cool.
they seem to really enjoy that part of it.
Nice. So moving on from that, what did you play this time around? What games did you get in that you feel are notable or want to share?
Well, I got to play two sessions in addition to running the one, which, given that you really technically there were 3 RPG session windows on Saturday, I think. There was like 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So obviously you couldn't play all 3. I was going to try and play Feng Shui 2 at 6 o'clock after my game wrapped up. However, no one else showed up to play. So I sat there and talked to the GM about it for a while, this, that, and the other thing. And then I ended up running around. That's when I went and got something to eat. And I came back and found someone I met last year at the convention setting up to run Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland, which I've I've been curious about, right? Like, it sounds kind of crazy, fun, over the top. I know it's very OSR styled. I just like I always kind of wanted to try it, and they're a fun person to play with. So, what the heck? So, and so for those who don't know, the game is post-apocalyptic. Um, Mad Max meets Monday Night Raw with probably some kind of Saturday morning cartoon over the topness to it as well, as if wrestling over the topness wasn't enough, right?
Pretty much.
But like Randy Savage is the canonical god of war in the setting. Or I know he is a god, maybe not the god of war, but he is a god for sure. So like it's a game that very much pokes fun at itself in a lot of ways, right? It's just telling you, go ahead, be crazy, be zany, you know, like it could be pretty meat grindery, I think. I see, what did we lost two characters through the course of the adventure. I lost one and the person sitting next to me lost one. But at the same time, like, it didn't feel punishing. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't. Now, some of this too, right? GM was rolling awful. So, I don't know. One session's in some ways a little hard to judge a game for anyway,
Right.
but it didn't feel it didn't feel like Morkborg gritty. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I've read that game a couple times. I don't think it's that gritty. I think it's meant to be pretty gritty and hardcore, but it's not meant to be nearly as hard as like Morkborg really is a corpse grinder.
Right, and I think too, like Toxic, yeah, Neon Lords, it's also level based, and once you get past quote unquote first level, I think it would be a little less meat grindery. But it's got kind of that, second edition D&D first level, man, you're just a bit squishy, kind of vibe to
Yeah,
it. So,
I could feel that. Again, that's a game that really wants to be played longer form too, though. It's weird because I don't have much of an inclination to run it longer form, but
mhm,
I want to run that short. I want to run it like one or two sessions, and that'll be it. But it has the want to be, run is like like you said, it's level based, so it has the want to be run longer form. That's just
right.
not something I don't know. I just don't know about running it longer form.
Yeah, no, and look, right, it's
Maybe if you did it as like let me put it this way. Maybe if you ran it in like between normal session, like if you were running something and you like we're gonna play 3 sessions of this and then 1 session of neon, whatever. I'm not gonna say the whole title every time.
yeah. Yeah, it's it's
Um,
it's a tongue twister in a lot of ways.
yeah. If you ran, maybe a session and a session or 2 sessions and a session of that, I think it would be pretty decent.
Well, I think, yeah, possibly. I think too, right? I I've played with the guy who GM'd it before. I think he may have intentionally kind of turned up the over the top, but it's also it is a gonzo kind of over the top concept in a lot of ways, right? Like,
Yeah, it's meant to have that turned up. I don't know. It's interesting hearing you talk about that game because
well,
I still want to get my hands on it. I still want to play it. I still hear that you had a good time with it, but
yeah, because like you have your characters are various different things from, very kind of deserted wasteland retro samurai to, mutant ape man to semi cybernetic what they call bicorns, which are reverse centaurs with two horns, like body of a human but head of a horse, or
right.
two-horned unicorn in this case. So and yeah, it intentionally leans into some of the wrestling stuff and the kind of the 80s, like I forget the one character that somebody was playing had a very like metal musician theme to it.
Hmm.
Um, it was fun. Um, I would definitely consider doing something with it at some point. I just don't know, what or when.
Right, right. Yeah, very cool. Well, did you get to play anything else?
I did. I finally got to play Savage Worlds.
There you go. There it is,
Got to
folks.
play. I got to play Savage Worlds on Sunday because originally I was going to help him run the the what do you want to call it, like because they have like a library of like board games that you can play and like a call it a rental library. Well, I was going to help him run that since I didn't have anything I was signed up for Sunday, and through different conversations, and it also they were supposedly down a person. So I'm like, hey, look, I get to hang out in the gaming area. It'll be cool. So I get there. They're like, no, we're good. Just do your thing. Like, okay. So I look down at the sign up sheets for tabletop games, and there's like Savage Worlds, Eberron. Okay. I mean, why not?
Yeah, because me and you can't pass up on when we see Everon,
Well, yeah. Even though
especially
I
if you've got the free time at the con.
right. And now I have said before that I had certain reservations about Savage Worlds for Eberron because of how different things worked. I may have been somewhat misguided. I may not have been. I didn't get that deep in it, but I actually got to experience the system, which was something that I've been wanting to do for a while because I think it's one of those engines where reading it, how do I want to say this? It's not like some games you read them and it feels a lot more complicated to read than it does to play.
Right.
Savage Worlds doesn't feel that complicated to read. It feels like there's a lot of things you'd have to remember that might be kind of tough to just keep all straight. But as a player in practice, it wasn't like that. It was like just this, that. Okay, boom. It does have a little bit of math involved in keeping track of your raises, stuff like that. But
Right.
again, that's multiples of 4. So
Yeah, it's really not that hard.
right. Why I say multiples of 4, it's increments of how much you beat the difficulty in increments of 4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, like,
So,
in other
gotcha.
words, if your base difficulty in the system is 4, which it has to be because the smallest die type is a D4.
Right.
Because otherwise, yeah, you really wouldn't have a chance. Um, but let's just say, for example, for whatever reason, it's a +1 difficulty because whatever factor. So now a 5 succeeds. If you get a 9, you get a raise, which, like in an attack, gives you an extra die of damage. And then all dice explode, which means you can get just crazy stuff happens, which is fun. I actually played a pacifist elven mage, so I spent a lot of time trying to slow people down and speed other people up.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it I kind of like the way the magic system works. Basically, you have points depending on what you want to do. Like certain spells, we'll call it, take more points than others. But then, like, let's say I wanted to cast, and I'm just going to call it haste. I forget what it's called in there, but we'll call it. But it's the same spell actually for hasting someone or slowing someone, just which way you spin it. Which again, I think it's called temporal something or other. Anyway, so it costs you 1 power point to cast the spell, and you're going to spend that power point regardless of whether you succeed or not. But, and this is where I think it's kind of cool. Let's say I wanted to target 2 additional people. So for 2 additional power points, I can add 2 additional targets. But I only have to pay that cost if it's successful.
Right.
So you aren't going to burn up all your spell points by and not do anything with them unless you just have absolutely crap dice rolls, because you do have to make a spellcasting roll.
Right.
But I kind of like the fact that it doesn't overly penalize you for not rolling successfully.
Yeah. It doesn't penalize you for trying.
Mm-hmm.
Too bad, at least.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I'm excited. I now that you've got to play it, I'm really excited to get to try it because
Yeah, I definitely now want to try, and I just have to figure out, because of certain elements of it, I think I need to do it on a VTT.
right, you got to find the VTT that works for you though.
Yeah, well, I don't see when last time I talked Savage Worlds, Darren offered to help me set some of that up.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, that would be good.
but one of the things too is like it uses literal playing cards for initiative. So, yeah, otherwise, y'all just have to take my word for it if I'm GMing.
Yeah, I think there's probably a way. People play a lot of Savage Worlds on
Oh
tabletop.
yeah, like we were actually, so the way our GM had it set up, we had character sheets. We were actually rolling dice, but he had the adventure set up in Roll20 and had a TV with the maps and everything on it. Because that's the other thing is Savage Worlds is kind of intended as a maps and tokens game. your movement is in so many squares, etc.
Right.
At least for, let's call it, structured time. But like I said, I was very happy with, how it, like, there weren't really like any confusing circumstances that came up. Let's put it that way. I almost died in that one too, but that's what happens when you play the mage, especially the
Yeah.
one who doesn't like to fight.
Yeah. Oh, so what else did you see at PGX aside from that? I
Oh,
mean,
geez.
I'm sure you saw our favorite local purveyors of fine goods.
Yes, I got to talk with Phil from Game Masters and Enrico from
Alex,
Drawbridge and Alex
Alex from
from
Retrograde.
Retrograde. I got to chat a little bit with Alex Thomas from the Mutants and Masterminds team because he came into town again.
Ah, so great. I love that.
I got to talk with several local game designers who I had not met previously, including one that we tentatively have scheduled for next week's show.
Next week. Yep. 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 So as you hear this, we'll be recording that.
Yeah, basically. So there was that. Now there was kind of two local, more well. Plus, actually, I also got to talk with Alexandra from the Dietman Files. She was there again, also. But a couple other local designers, including one that lives about 5 minutes from me. Kind of weird how small the world is sometimes.
Well, and notably, that's a big change from last year because last year we walked around and there were, I mean, a handful, but not that many local
Hmm.
creators. And I think seeing that turnout actually makes me the most excited for next year's because,
Yeah,
you know, how many more local creators are going to come out like, oh, hey, I'm gonna go to that. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I can't wait to meet more, local writers, local artists. Finding out Pittsburgh has a pretty cool little scene.
it really
Like,
does.
and maybe sometime, maybe we'll be able to get that cool little scene together and have like a me and Steve meet and greet in East Coast, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, that would be fun. But yeah, like the guy that's over near me here, now his game is kind of an adventure card with a little bit of board game element to it, but
mhm.
it's also based on an original novel he wrote. So like, and it seems really cool. It's this kind of sci-fi, futuristic thing. The artwork looks like it has some Halo 40K inspiration, you
Oh,
know, so I mean, that's really cool, and I got to talk with him a few times, and definitely gonna at some point. I'm a little tight on money last weekend, so I didn't get to actually spend that much. But fortunately, he's close enough. I may just like email him and go, "Hey, can I get a copy of this, that, or whatever?" You know what I mean?
right.
But yeah, so it was cool that way. Had a lot of the same stuff that was there last year. I would say probably more cosplay. Um, they had a crew that brought in, and you might have recognized them. I'm not as up on a lot of the current anime as you probably are,
Hmm.
but they had some vehicles that were, and by vehicles
Oh,
I mean legit full size.
yeah, I saw there's a so I actually met either the owner or the previous owner. There's a Honda Beat, which is like you probably saw it. Looks like a Honda Civic that's been cut down.
Yeah.
And it has well that's actually a video game character, Android 21 on the side of it from
Okay.
Dragon Ball Fighters. And I had met them outside of Cheesecake Factory like 3 years ago.
Okay.
Because I was like, oh crap, I recognize that car. I talked to that guy because I was one of the only people that looked and was like, you have a Honda Beat. Because he had had a bunch of old guys walk up to him and go, what'd you do to this Civic? I'm like, nothing. I
But
ordered
there
it
was
that way.
a a motorcycle that I thought I heard as or saw a Facebook post. It was related to One Piece.
Yeah, I saw some of
Um,
that.
but they had, I think, 3 cars and a bike there. There was a Ghostbusters cosplay team. The 501st and Rebel Legion were there again. The Star Trek people were there again. And there was just a lot of people running around in various cosplay stuff. They had a big cosplay showcase Sunday while I was playing Savage Worlds. Um, and of course, I didn't get to go check out a lot of the music because I was off doing other things. which
Right.
I really wanted to do, but it was like, well, do I you know, get to play a game that I've been curious about? What do I do?
That's sort of the like I love PGX, but it's a hard con because like if you want a game, it's a great con for gaming. It's a great
Mhm.
con for playing tabletop games. By the sounds of it, this year they had you guys far enough away from the music that it wasn't too bad.
Now you couldn't hear the bands at all.
How was like I'm guessing the gaming area was probably pretty like not quiet, but reasonably hearable.
Oh, yeah, it was fine. It was a little loud, but so for those who obviously have never been to the Monroeville Convention Center, you aren't gonna know what we're talking about. But effectively, there's kind of 2 halves to the building. There's one side that is kind of your classic convention center, right? High ceilings, concrete floor. That's where they have the concession area, that's like built into the building. That was the vendor hall, and then one wall of that was like curtained off, and that's where all the gaming tables were. So you had some noise from like the vendor floor and whatnot, but not anything crazy. Kind of what you would expect is normal convention noise. And then over in the area where they had the main convention last year, that's lower ceilings, carpeted, whatever. That was where they had the arcade set up this year. Was in what was the main area what was the main area last year. And so, like, they had, I want to say, and I don't know how wide that room is, but it's a significantly, I mean, it's a decent sized hall.
Right.
They had, I want to say, 5 rows of classic arcade games. I know I saw Mortal Kombat 2, NBA Jam, Tron, several like Galaxian or whatever that one is, one of the space shooter ones. They had an Iron Man Stewart off road that I played a little bit. There was a Cruising USA. There was, Terminator. There was just like Pac Man, Mrs. Pac Man. All kinds of assorted arcade games. Like I said, I want to say about 5 rows of them that had to be, I'm going to say 15 to 20 machines a row at least. And then they had another whole row of nothing but pinball machines. And then they had a whole slew of tables with consoles set up. Everything from like literal like Pong to modern stuff, all of that. And then the back room where they had the arcade last year and where we did our panel, and that was just for like bands. And then Sunday they had the cosplay showcase back there and all that. So like the bands were back far enough. You probably had some audio bleed into the arcade area,
Yeah, but
but
that's
that's
not a
not
problem.
no. Like, last year it was literally in the same room. So
Yeah, last year was tough because all three things basically shared the same space.
yeah, in a lot of ways. And look, it was the best they could do with what they had to work with. This
Oh
year
yeah, no,
they fixed a lot of that.
I'm really happy that they did expand and grow out into that because that was definitely the come away from last year was this needs to take up the whole con. Like
Yeah.
this needs to take up the whole hall.
And I haven't talked with the organizers. Um
Yeah, probably not since we talked to them.
well, I mean, I talked to them while they were there. I saw all of them. That we said hello and chatted whatever. But I haven't heard any sort of door numbers or anything. I would say it didn't feel quite as crowded as last year, but you had easily double the space.
Right,
So I
right.
would say they had a, a reasonably higher turnout. I did hear they had some significant lines outside before the doors opened. I know when I rolled up Saturday morning, I got there about half an hour before the doors opened. And because, we were guests, we get to sneak in the back entrance.
Right.
But at that point, it was lined up from the doors all the way to the uphill side of the parking lot.
Oof. Good
And that
grief.
was a half hour before doors opened.
Well, and yeah. Some of that though, they also did open it up so you could come in Friday and get your badge. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they had early pickup if you had advance purchase your badges. And I did hear on the Facebook groups that there was a little bit of confusion and some lines got mixed up as far as box office and just waiting for the door because the great big signs they had didn't get along with the wind that we had Saturday morning.
right.
And there was a short window of time where they didn't realize that the signs had gotten blown over and people got confused before they got someone out there to,
Fix the
you know,
signs and get
fix the
everything
signs
straightened
or
out.
just let people know, hey, make one line for the box office, make another line to waiting for the door or whatever.
Yeah, that's nothing they can really control.
No, no. I mean, like I said, they had the signs. It's just that wind didn't cooperate, and you can't control
Sometimes
that.
nature.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of vendors with a lot of cool stuff. A lot of, there was a couple dice vendors that had some really neat stuff. You had, assorted, a lot of video game. I would say, actually, in a sense, probably the vendors were a bit more focused than they were last year.
Okay.
Like, I remember last year there was that one table that had like a pretty big table, had a lot of like old VHS and stuff. I didn't see that this year.
Yeah, I didn't think they were coming back.
But like, a lot of retro console stuff, a lot of like toys, that kind of stuff.
Very
Couple
cool.
of dice vendors. You remember that what was it called? Crinkle game or whatever that
Yeah,
GM Chris and
Crokinole.
them were playing?
Yeah,
Crokinole.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
They showed up.
Yeah, I figured
They
they'd
were
be
there.
back.
They had a big section, where they had like four, maybe four boards set up. I got to play that actually toward the end of the day Sunday.
Crokinole really fun. I would never invest in a board. They're
I
so expensive.
well, that I don't know because I didn't ask about pricing. I just played a demo game, but I will say it's a little challenging when you have the depth perception issues that I do. But it was fun.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You have like depth perception issues because of your eyes. I bet you that game is pretty challenging for you.
Yeah, well, that and then I'm not used to flicking little delicate things,
Right, right. And just
like
sending
with
things
a touch.
flinging, flying.
Like
Yeah,
I'm a bit of a ham-fisted whatever. Like I have a decent amount of touch using tools, but that's different than shooting a quarter-sized wooden disc.
yeah.
But it was fun. So you know what?
It, it is a it is a pretty fun game. I sent you a link to one on Amazon so you can get an
Okay.
idea why I say it's pricey.
Okay, hang on, let me check. Um, I don't see why I couldn't make one myself,
Exactly.
quite
Yeah,
frankly.
for the price.
Although, to be fair, it also I mean, materials aren't cheap either, so
No, no. Yeah, so it sounds like you had a really good time
Oh,
at
yeah.
PGX this year.
I did, very much did.
I
Uh,
am, to say I'm bummed that I couldn't make it is an understatement of the century. But I'm looking at possibly just me going and maybe dragging the wife with me to go to PAX Unplugged this year out in Philly.
okay.
I'm him hawing around about it. If the numbers can work out right, I might go, which would be a good time. And anybody that's going to be out at PAX Unplugged could come and meet me.
I think we
Um,
have at least one of our listeners actually works for his local game shop there.
yeah, I know. One listener is one of our patrons who we
Mhm,
game weekly with has helped a lot with PAX Unplugged.
mhm.
So I was going to get with them and talk about what I need to know, what I don't need to know, what I need to be concerned with.
Yeah.
Um, But if I'll warn everybody now, if I go to PAX Unplugged, I'm not running nothing. I'm going to be there and be like, I went to PAX. And that's going to be the end of that conversation.
Yeah, and look, I will say this, it for PGX almost has too much for the time you have.
Yeah, I don't want to tell them to do it, but I almost wish they added a third day.
Well, I have heard rumblings that that is in discussion.
Uh, that would
Um,
be simultaneously nice and terrible because I would love that because what I would do is then plan my games accordingly and not like one whole day I would not have any games that I would play or run
mhm,
to just absorb the con. And
yeah,
then the final 2 days I would run a day and I would game a day.
mhm,
And that would be how I would break that down. Uh
yeah, it was just well, and I even put a post in the Facebook group about, my only quote unquote complaint is that I missed things that I wanted to check out because I was doing other things I wanted to do.
Right, exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
and like,
it's not really a like, it's a hard complaint to make when you're like,
look, if that's my complaint, they're doing something right.
"Oh, yeah. I'm excited for this in the future. I'm so happy to hear this year was a good turnout. I'm excited for next year. Good grief, I really hope I can go next year."
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
it was just like to even just, walk around and like, so I start walking around, I look, oh, and so I get there half an hour before it opens. Of course, at that point, most of the vendors are set up. I start talking with a couple of the game designer people, and all of a sudden, oh crap, it's almost time for me to run my game.
right, right.
Where did 2 hours go?
Well, and we're good for that.
Well, yeah, and then other people, ran into obviously a whole bunch of people we met last year. The guys from there's a local board game podcast that I met them last year, and so I ended up talking with them a bit. Actually, ran into someone else from our Discord over there. Hello, Lena. Um, so yeah, it was like, it just people you'd seen last year, whatever. It was cool. It really was. It kind of still had a very small feel, and there was like people I recognized from the con last year because of that, because remember there was the guy running around in like the costume with a light bulb on his hat last year.
Yeah, yeah.
He was there.
Nice.
I have no idea who they are, you know, or
Just
honestly, the reference if there is any reference to the costume, I just went, "Hey, I remember seeing that get up last year."
just recognizing faces.
Yep,
That's
and so
awesome.
yeah, it was really cool.
Uh, so any final thoughts on that? I think we'll keep this kind of short as an episode because you can hear he's not feeling the greatest, and neither am I, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing all right. I don't know, if I got a little bit of a cold or if it's allergies. It's weird because my congestion is very much coming and going. Like I'm sure you can hear a difference in my voice, like as we go. Like it's better and it's worse. It's fluctuating a lot. So I
Yeah,
don't know. You know, it is what it is. It wasn't overly crowded, so it wasn't like everybody was all super in tight and everything. So
very nice.
yeah, I mean, it was a really good time. Excited for next year already. I'm sure we'll have members of the team on again to talk about it for next year once they have some details finalized. Another thing
Yep.
they did
And
that I thought was really cool. I believe if you signed up to GM a game, you got your badge comped. I'm not
correct.
100% certain on that. Okay. And you also, if you showed up to run your game or had a legit excuse, like in your case,
Got a
you got a
T-shirt.
free shirt, which I have yours because they went, "Here, will you take this to Steve?" And I said, "Sure."
Sure, I'll see him at some point in the
So
next
hang on.
year. I need to see it. Oh, it's an audio podcast, folks. We're digging for T-shirts.
Yep. We're digging for shirts in an audio podcast. Although you may be able to hear the color.
Yeah, I don't have many yellow T-shirts. That's cool. I'm gonna have to. I gotta get with you and get that at some point in the near future because I gotta wear that. I gotta add that to my collection of T-shirts. I've decided that when I go to these gaming conventions, my goal is to get a T-shirt from every gaming convention I attend. So I'm
Yeah.
already looking at how do I get a T-shirt from PAX.
Yeah, last year I bought a shirt, a PGX shirt.
I thought about it, but last year I was broke. So when I saw this year, it was like, oh, you get a free shirt when you GM, and I was like, well, I'm a guest, so I don't expect the free shirt. And then they did it. I'm like, woo!
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was kind of the thing for me. They're like, because I had basically, told them, I said, look, I'll more than happily help out. And I had actually told the organizers this before we ever got, around to the convention. Like, look, I'll help you out if there's some way I can help out. And
Right.
every time I go, no, you're a guest, whatever. I'm like, look, I don't mind helping out. I just want to hang out in the games area anyway. So,
Yeah,
you
set me
know,
up. I'll do something for you.
um,
But very
but
cool.
yeah, it was really, really cool that way. Really like a very much kind of a community atmosphere in a lot of ways, because you see this person, that person, people I know from, some of the local game shops, that kind of thing. It was really, really neat. Uh
Yeah, I need to. maybe in the near future here, we'll get some stuff going at some local game shops because I need to get out into that scene more often.
I need to
And
get down to Rico's at some point.
let me know when you're going because I haven't been there either. So
It's just not at all a convenient direction for me to go.
where's it?
Castle Shannonish.
Oh, yeah, that is not a convenient direction, but I'd be down to go. So let me know if you're going at any point.
And I found
Maybe
out
we can coordinate something.
Rico, who is pretty good friends with two different individuals that I used to work with.
Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's cool.
So yeah, like I said, it really just, look, even it's fun to the point where, like, okay, the guy that I played, to give you an idea how kind of community this feels, right? We're playing Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland. Enrico, the one game store owner, just swings by the front of the tabletop area, and the GM looks at him and goes, "Rico, these dice you sold me are cursed." And he, just immediately, starts laughing and, whatever. But just, like I said, people know each other, you know.
Yeah, it's so nice. It's so nice.
Yeah, and
I
they
know
had
it's weird, but
all the tattoo artists again this year. I almost forgot about that. They were kind of along like the back wall, or not the back wall, but like from the main entrance, the tabletop area was to the right, and the tattoo people were mostly along the left wall,
there you go.
like across the back side.
It's not a
You
bad
know,
spot for them. So
no, and like the whole center of it was vendor floor.
yeah, so
So yeah, it was. I mean, and like it, the arcade and video games. I walked through it a couple times just to kind of like take it all in, because there's so much of it. But
yeah,
yeah,
it's cool, man. I am happy that they're doing well. Happy that it was a good con. Very excited for next year. Can't wait to be back.
mm-hmm.
Um, but with all that being said, I think it's time we move into game of the week.
Woohoo! Game of the week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
So I have one here called. So it's really competitively priced. It's $0.00,
Okay.
and it's called Hard Time, as in hard time. So it's the quick play rules for Hard Time. Now, if the full game's out yet, but I found the quick play rules for free, I'm definitely picking those up. And then if the full game is out, maybe if qualifies, I'll pick that up. I'm sending you a
Shoot
message
me a
with it
link
now.
because I don't think I'm. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, definitely wasn't what came up when I searched real quick.
Yeah. So it is basically a game about movie style heists and doing a Hollywood style, like, movie noir bank robbery heist type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sounds a lot of fun. Their price is competitive enough that it is a good pitch for me to give it a try.
Yeah, the price is definitely right.
Yeah. Looks like it's its own sort of system, original format. Yeah. Hard Time is a game about planning and committing a Hollywood style heist in a noir world that looks frighteningly like ours. All our characters need is a cold gun and a certain moral ambiguity.
Yep.
So that sounds like a lot of fun.
It feels like probably another one of those that, like a couple of these that we've played recently, where there's not a lot to it, but it leans really heavily into the themes and the tropes, and is a lot of fun if you just cooperate and lean into it.
It's like concentrated tabletop RPGs. Like
Mhm.
it's you go to the store, you buy the concentrate that you put in your waters, like the Mio concentrates.
Uh-huh.
It's that. It's this is terrible by itself, but once it's watered down with enough people and some ridiculousness that is tabletop gaming, it's fantastic.
Yeah, like, well, look, did you play Heavy Metal Wizard Sorcerers with us?
No, I did not. I did not get to play that.
That, like, for a 200-page game, we had more fun with that. Partially because we got to make fun of the person who was Ben GMing a bit, because they know nothing about metal music.
Yeah, I picked up on that as I was out. I was getting like the messages from the Discord of like, I can't believe you don't know this band.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one thing if you don't know, uh, any number of, like, lower tier, or not lower tier, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of those bands that are just
Obscure.
Yeah, like,
Well, you
you
don't
know,
know who Blur is?
but like when you go Dio and they just look at you like, huh?
Do you know the Beatles? Oh, are we familiar with the Beatles?
Black Sabbath.
Iron Maiden. No, we don't know Maiden. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And admittedly, I'm a bit of a, you know,
Oh yeah,
not
we're
as
both.
much of a metalhead as some, but I know my share.
Well, we're both like 70s, 80s metalheads. Like it's where the majority of our music taste lies.
Yeah, some into the mid '90s probably.
Yeah, some into the mid 90s.
Um,
Anything newer than like 1998, and it's like,
I mean, yeah, there's
there's
some good
some
stuff
stuff.
out now. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
some stuff, but we're not like neither of us are like, oh yeah, the new stuff's really like,
yeah. I'm not so much into the new metal scene. I'll admit it. Uh,
yeah. But
um,
yeah, very cool. I think that's going to be a fun little game to pick up, throw in the bag, and just have around. You know how I like those little
oh, yep.
episodic heist style games, and it just being a heist game makes life a little bit
Hmm.
better.
Yep.
So that was hard time. What do you got, Steve?
All right. Well, I went in the less expensive vein as well. Not obviously, I can only match yours. I can't beat it, but I didn't. I didn't even do that. So this one, it's also a little bit thicker. It's 135 pages. PDF's going to cost you $5. Actually, $4.99.
Wow, man, breaking the bank on that one.
Yep. It's called An Age of Blood and Gold.
Oh, I looked at this. Also, you can tell it's post con because we're both like, this game's free and this game's $5. Ain't got no money. But yeah, the Age of Blood and Gold, that looked really cool. I was looking at
Yeah.
that the other day.
And so, as you can put together from the title, it is a pirate game. Basically, it claims to be Forged in the Dark Pirates.
Oh, cool. I'm gonna have to check that out and pick it up because I looked at it and I just didn't think too much about it.
Yeah, it kind of describes itself if you like Blades in the Dark or Seventh Sea, but maybe didn't quite gel with some elements of that. This might be the game for you. 135 pages has over 40 pages of pirate lore. Rules for character creation and gameplay, advice for building stories, new and historical NPCs. It says it has really good art. The cover's pretty.
Yeah, that's a pickup. I'm a sucker. I think I've told you this, but I'm a sucker for a good pirate game.
I yeah, I've been waiting on one I backed on Kickstarter for a while now, and I don't want to say I'm
Oh,
losing interest in it, but
oh, I know which one.
but the fact that it has been as long as it
Almost,
has,
yeah, almost a couple years now.
yeah.
Um,
And I get small team,
yeah,
world has been a challenging place.
but let's not dwell on that too much.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, I feel you, and I've been wanting a good pirate game. I'll be curious to see how this does with
Yeah.
like naval combat and stuff because in my opinion that's a very delicate line to straddle, and hitting the right notes on naval combat is tough
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Because
you want it to be kind of pedantic, but you don't want it to be overly pedantic.
right, right.
But it's like it is a tough line to hit where you're trying to be like, okay, I want a good amount of detail, but I don't want you to be like, okay, now you have to wick the cannon.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, it what are you gonna yeah, you gotta it is a weird thing to it's one of those it's like hacking in cyberpunk, right? It's hard to get it
yeah,
right.
if you get it right, it's notable. If you don't get it right, everybody is like, ooh, that's the game that didn't do that right.
Mhm.
Finding the right balance where it's a team activity as well is another hard one. But like I said, I'm curious. I looked at this. I want to check it out. Yeah, it sounds really cool.
Yeah, it calls itself a game of pirates and horror in the Caribbean Sea. So, like I said, looks interesting. It's $5. So,
There you go.
oh, crap. It literally dropped today as we
Oh,
record.
wow.
So, yeah, brand new.
And as always, links to everything are in the show notes. Patreon, Facebook, Discord, Twitter. Twitter not so active, but Facebook, Patreon. Discord is the place to be. If you're listening to us on or using Apple Music, or not Apple Music, but Apple Podcasts, or any podcatcher that lets you leave a review, please give us a 5-star review. It helps spread the podcast to other listeners and other people with the same interests, and is just generally a good thing for the show. If you don't like listening to this podcast, if this was the worst podcast you've ever listened to, our email is down in the description. We do check it.
Get updates every day on my phone.
Yep. So, with all that being said, we want to remind everyone to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.